Hello class, good to see you again. The new year is approaching and I've made it my goal to teach you on a daily basis this year. Well, let's not lose time. This is American English File, 2nd edition, Book 3, Student Book, Part 9A, Lucky Encounters. Alright, let's get to it. Answer the questions with a partner, you and your friend. Say what would you do and why. I'm going to give you some time. Read the statements and write your answers. For example, what would you do if somebody on the street asked you for money on your way home tonight? Or what would you do if you were driving home at night and you saw somebody who had run out of gas? What would you do if you saw an old man being attacked on the street by a couple of teenagers? And what would you do if you were in a line at a bus station or airport and someone asked to go in front of you because he or she was in a hurry? Alright, write down your answers. Now, I need you to speak with your friends about each scenario. Exchange your ideas. Compare your answers. Do it. Alright, that was good discussion back there. Now, part 1, reading and speaking. The ticket inspector. Everybody, I need you to read the beginning of a true story by the writer Bernard Hare about something that happened to him when he was a student. Then in pairs, you and your friend, decide what you think happened next. Write down your guesses. I'll be waiting.
A few minutes later.
Alright, you're back. Let's read the story together. I was living in a student flat in North London. When the police knocked on my door one night, I thought it was because I hadn't paid the rent for a few months. So I didn't open the door. But then I wondered if it was something to do with my mother, who I knew wasn't very well. There was no phone in the flat, and this was before the days of mobile phones. So I ran down to the nearest phone box and phoned my dad in Leeds, in the north of England. He told me that my mom was very ill in hospital and that I should go home as soon as I could. When I got to the station, I found that I'd missed the last train to Leeds. There was a train to Peterborough from where some local trains went to Leeds, but I would miss the connection by about 20 minutes. I decided to get to the Peterborough train. I was so desperate to get home that I thought maybe I could hitchhike from Peterborough. Tickets, please. I looked up and I saw the ticket inspector. He could see from my eyes that I'd been crying. Are you okay? He asked. Of course I'm okay, I said. You look awful. He continued. Is there anything I can do to help? You could go away, I said rudely. But he didn't. He sat down and said, if there's a problem, I'm here to help. The only thing I could think of was to tell him my story. When I finished, I said, so now you know. I'm a bit upset and I don't feel like talking anymore, okay? Okay, he said, finally getting up. I'm sorry to hear that, son. I hope you make it home. I continued to look out of the window at the dark countryside. 10 minutes later, the ticket inspector came back. Alright, so what do you think happens next? Write down your guesses. Now, I need you to listen to what happened and check your guesses. Were you right? Let's see.
5.2.
The ticket inspector touched my arm. Listen, he said. When we get to Peterborough station, run as fast as you can to platform 1. The Leeds train will be there. I looked at him, without really understanding what he had said. What do you mean? I said. Is the train late or something? No, it's not late, the ticket inspector said. I've just radioed Peterborough station. The train is going to wait for you. As soon as you get on, it'll leave. The passengers will complain, but let's not worry about that. You'll get home and that's the main thing. And he walked away. I suddenly realized what an amazing thing he had done. I got up and went after him. I wanted to give him everything I had, all the money in my wallet, but I knew he would be offended. I grabbed his arm. I just wanted to... But I couldn't continue. It's okay, he said. No problem. I wish I had a way to thank you, I said. I really appreciate what you've done. No problem, he said again. Listen, if you want to thank me, the next time you see someone in trouble, help them. That will pay me back. And tell them to do the same to someone else. It'll make the world a better place. When the train stopped, I rushed to platform 1. And sure enough, the Leeds train was there waiting. And a few hours later, I was with my mum in hospital. Even now, years later, whenever I think of her, I remember the good ticket inspector on that late-night train to Peterborough. It changed me from a young man who was nearly a criminal into a decent human being. I've been trying to pay him back ever since then.
Now, the message was very good. If you want to thank me, do something good for some people or for some other people who need help. Now, let's give a round of applause for this message. All right, very good. So, the ticket inspector radioed Peterborough station and told them to make the train to Leeds wait for Bernard. All right, very good. But I need you to listen again and answer the questions. There are 3 questions. Listen and answer. Let's go.
5.2.
The ticket inspector touched my arm. Listen, he said. When we get to Peterborough station, run as fast as you can to platform 1. The Leeds train will be there. I looked at him, without really understanding what he had said. What do you mean? I said. Is the train late or something? No, it's not late, the ticket inspector said. I've just radioed Peterborough station. The train is going to wait for you. As soon as you get on, it'll leave. The passengers will complain, but let's not worry about that. You'll get home and that's the main thing. And he walked away. I suddenly realized what an amazing thing he had done. I got up and went after him. I wanted to give him everything I had, all the money in my wallet, but I knew he would be offended. I grabbed his arm. I just wanted to... But I couldn't continue. It's okay, he said. No problem. I wish I had a way to thank you, I said. I really appreciate what you've done. No problem, he said again. Listen, if you want to thank me, the next time you see someone in trouble, help them. That will pay me back. And tell them to do the same to someone else. It'll make the world a better place. When the train stopped, I rushed to platform 1. And sure enough, the Leeds train was there waiting. And a few hours later, I was with my mum in hospital. Even now, years later, whenever I think of her, I remember the good ticket inspector on that late-night train to Peterborough. It changed me from a young man who was nearly a criminal into a decent human being. I've been trying to pay him back ever since then.
All right, very good. My friends, check your answers with your partners. Okay, very good. So what did Bernard have to do as soon as he got off the train? Well, he had to run to platform 1. How did Bernard react? He was very happy and wished he had the way to thank the ticket inspector. And what did the ticket inspector then ask him to do? He asked Bernard to help the next person he sees who is in trouble and then to tell them to do the same to someone else and make the world a better place.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Let's continue. Not gonna lie, I was really affected by this story. But I have 2 more stories for you. After this story was on the news, several people wrote in with their stories about being helped by strangers. Alright, so I have 2 stories. The story 1 is the students and B is the angel. I need you to take your time, read each story, where it happened, what the problem was, and what the stranger or the strangers did to help. And after that, I need you to tell it to your partner and tell me which story do you think was the most surprising or was the most moving. Why? I'll be waiting. I'll give you the time to read them.
A few moments later.
Okay, you're back. Did you answer the questions? Let's read the stories together. The students. I was living in Korea at the time, teaching English. I had to leave the country and return again because of problems with my visa. So I booked a ferry to Fukuoka in Japan. I intended to change some South Korean money into Japanese yen when I got there, but when I arrived, I discovered it was a holiday in Japan and all the banks were closed. I didn't have a credit card. I walked from the ferry terminal toward the town, wondering what I was going to do without any Japanese money. I was feeling lonely and depressed, and suddenly I heard a young couple speaking French. I asked them if they spoke any English, and they told me in good English that they were Belgian students. When I explained my problem, they immediately offered to take me around the city and look for somewhere where I could change money. They paid for my bus ticket, and they took me to several places. And in the end, we found a hotel where I was able to change my cash. They then invited me to join them and their friends for the evening. I had a fantastic night and have never forgotten how they changed all their plans just to help a stranger. Karina. Well, that was a very good story. Let's read the next one. The Angel. It was a cold Sunday evening in Manchester. I was a college student and my girlfriend and I had been invited to dinner with our tutor at his house about 18 miles away. We decided to go on my motorcycle, but we hadn't realized how cold it was. So we hadn't dressed warmly enough, and after 10 minutes on the bike, we were absolutely freezing. When we were about halfway there, the bike started to make a funny noise and then stopped. We had run out of gas. We stood at the side of the road shivering with cold and not sure what to do. Suddenly, a passing car stopped. The driver got out and opened the trunk of his car. He took out a can of gas. He walked up to my bike, opened the gas tank and poured the gas in. Then he closed the tank and got back into his car without saying a single word and drove away. We couldn't believe our luck. We sometimes wonder if man who rescued us was an angel. Andy. Well, he was a very good guy. Now everybody, have you ever helped a stranger or been helped by a stranger? What happened? Discuss the rest with your friends. Share your experiences. And one more thing, be the light. Help people when you can. All the way to part 2, grammar. Third, conditional. Everybody, do you remember that story, that train story, the inspector? Very good. I need you to match the sentence halves from the story. I'll help you. For example, if the inspector hadn't stopped the train to Leeds, he would have missed his connection. Or number 2, if the couple hadn't helped Karina, A, she would have been alone without any money. And if the man in the car hadn't stopped, B, they would have had to walk for miles in the cold. Alright, now we call these the third conditional. But first, look at the sentences below. Which one describes what really happened? Which one describes how the situation might have been different? Look, if the inspector hadn't stopped the train, he would have missed his connection. Number 2, the inspector stopped the train so he didn't miss his connection. So as you can see, the first one describes how the situation might have been different, and the second one describes what really happened. Now I think you got the point. Follow me. All right, now listen. Third conditional.
5.3.
If I'd known about the meeting, I would have gone.
If James hadn't gone to the training course, he wouldn't have met his wife.
You wouldn't have lost your job if you hadn't been late every day.
Would you have gone to the party if you'd known Lisa was there?
All right, very good. So we usually use third conditional sentences to talk about how things could have been different in the past. For example, for hypothetical or imaginary situations, all right? For example, yesterday I got up late and missed my train, the real situation. If I hadn't got up late yesterday, I wouldn't have missed my train, the hypothetical or imaginary past situation. To make a third conditional, we use F plus past perfect and would have plus past participle. All right? The contraction of both had and would is apostrophe they, so don't mix it. We can use might or could instead of would to make the result less certain. For example, if she had studied harder, she might have passed the exam, so you give it some probability. All right? Now, let's test ourselves. Let's do it together. I've got your back. As always, I have two exercises for you. Match the phrases. For example, Billy wouldn't have injured his head, D, if he had worn his helmet. All right, and in exercise B, look, complete the third conditional sentences with the correct form of the verbs. For example, if Tom hadn't gone to college, he wouldn't have met Sarah. Not go, not meet becomes hadn't gone and wouldn't have met. As always, take your time, stop the video and do it yourself. Very good. Now, if you have done it, I need you to check your answers with your friends, learn from each other. Now, let's do it together. All right. Number 1. If I'd driven any faster, all right, I could have gotten a speeding ticket. All right. Number 2, John might have gotten the job. F, if he had been on time for his interview. All right. She would have hurt herself badly. H, if she had fallen down the stairs. If Katie hadn't gone to the party. E, she wouldn't have met her new boyfriend. Number 5, what would you have studied? A, if you had gone to college. Number 6, how would you have gotten to the airport? J, if the trains had been on strike. If you'd worn a warmer coat, B, you wouldn't have been so cold. Your parents would have enjoyed the trip. G, if they had come with us. And number 9, would you have helped me? C, if I'd asked you? Well done. The first part was easy, right? Now the second part. Look, number 1, if you hadn't taken me to the airport, I would have missed my flight. Number 2, we wouldn't have won the game if the referee hadn't given us a penalty. Number 3, you would have enjoyed the weekend if you had come with us. Number 4, if you hadn't bought the tickets online, they could have been more expensive. Number 5, Mike would have forgotten his wife's birthday if she hadn't reminded him. Number 6, if the police had arrived 5 minutes later, they wouldn't have caught the thief, all right? The thief, the burglar. Next one. If you hadn't lent me the money, I wouldn't have been able to go away for the weekend. Number 8. You would have hurt yourself if you had fallen off the horse. And number 9. We wouldn't have found the hotel if we hadn't seen the sign. And the last one. If I had known about the job, I would have applied for it. And that's all there is to it for the third conditional. I know, it sounds a little bit tricky, but you can do it. You're smart. Just practice on a daily basis. Great, you made it so far. Okay, part 3. Pronunciation. Sentence stress. I need you to listen and repeat. Let's go.
5.4. 1.
If I'd known you were sick, I would have come to see you.
2.
If the weather had been better, we would have stayed longer.
3.
If I hadn't stopped to get gas, I wouldn't have been late.
4,
We would have missed our flight if it hadn't been delayed.
All right, very good. You can listen multiple times. And now I have an exercise for you. I need you to listen and write 5 conditional sentences. And more importantly, third conditional. Let's go.
5.5. 1,
It would have been much quicker if we'd taken a taxi.
2,
She wouldn't have found out if you hadn't told her.
3,
The tickets would have been cheaper if we'd booked them earlier.
4,
If you hadn't done your homework so quickly, you wouldn't have made so many mistakes.
5,
I would have lent you some money if you'd asked me.
All right, very good. You can listen multiple times and check. These are the answers. Check your answers. Very good. You did great. That was easy, wasn't it? Part 4. Speaking, my favorite part. Everyone, read the questions and think about your answers. Okay? For example, look at some quotes about luck. Do you think they are true? Do you consider yourself in general to be a lucky person or not? Why or why not? Can you remember a time when you were either very lucky or very unlucky? What happened? And do you know anyone who you think is particularly lucky or unlucky? Why? All right, you need to discuss these questions, but first let's read the quotes. The more I practice, the luckier I get. Gary Player, golf player. You've got to think lucky if you fall into a mud hole. Check your back pocket, you might have caught a fish. Darrell Royal, American football coach. You never know what worse luck your bad luck has saved you from. Cormac McCarthy, writer. It was hard to read that sentence. If you have 2 friends in your lifetime, you're lucky. If you have 1 good friend, you're more than lucky. All right, you know the drill. You've read the quotes. Speak with your friends. Compare your answers. And one advice from me as your teacher, you make yourself lucky. You make progress. In this new year, you make a difference. Every day counts. Awesome. I'm really proud of you. You made it so far. I have a minor cold, but the show must go on. Think of some very successful people in business, business people, musicians, sports stars. Which of these 3 things do you think was probably most important in making them successful? Was it talent? Was it hard work? Or was it luck? Discuss these with your friends. You've got some business to do. Now, I want you to read this article. The name of the article is A Question of Luck. And it's about a book by Malcolm Gladwell. And I need you to answer these questions. 1, 2, and 3. Take your time. I'll be waiting.
6.5 hours later.
Impressive. Now let's read it together. What is the question when we always ask about successful people? We want to know what they're like, what kind of personalities they have, or how intelligent they are, or what kind of lifestyle they have, or what special talents they might have been born with. And we assume that it is those personal qualities that explain how the individual gets to the top of his or her profession. But according to Malcolm Gladwell, in his book Outliers, we are asking the wrong questions. He thinks that while talent is obviously a factor, there are 2 other more important ones that make a person successful. The first of these factors is luck. He begins with the example of sports players. In recent research done on various groups of elite ice hockey players from Canada and the Czech Republic. One fascinating fact came to light. In both countries, it was discovered that 40% of players on the top teams were born between January and March, 30% between April and June, and 20% between July and September, and only 10% between October and December. The explanation was simple. The school year in these countries runs from January to December. A boy who is 10 on January 2nd will be in the same class as the one whose 10th birthday is on December 30th. The chances are the first boy will be bigger, stronger, and more coordinated. He is much more likely than the other boys to be chosen to play on junior teams. He will then get better coaching than others and will play many more games. So will also get more practice. In the beginning, his advantage isn't so much that he is more talented, simply that he is older. He was lucky enough to be born in the first month of the year. But by the age of 13 or 14, with the extra coaching and practices, he really will be better than others and far more likely to be successful. The extra practice is vital because the second factor that Gladwell believes in is of great importance in determining whether somebody is going to be successful or not is what he calls the 10,000 hours theory. This theory, based on studies in many different fields, says that in order to get to very top, you need to put in 10,000 hours of practice, whether it is playing an instrument or a sport or programming a computer. That was really interesting. So, what three factors does he think being successful really depends on? Talent, luck, and practice. Number two, why is it an advantage for sports players to be born in the first month of the year in some countries? Because they will probably be bigger, stronger, and more coordinated than other sports players in the school year and will be chosen for a sports team. And next one, what is the 10,000 hours theory? It is a theory that says that in order to get to a very, very top in a sport, in anything, you need to put in 10,000 hours of practice. But we're not done yet. You did great. Let's continue. Great. Now listen to two other examples Gladwell mentions. The Beatles and Bill Gates. What two main reasons does he give for their extraordinary success? Okay, let's listen together.
5.6.
Apart from the hockey players, he also gives the examples of the Beatles, the most famous rock band of all time, and Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft. The Beatles were really lucky to be invited to play in Hamburg in 1960. The club owner who invited them usually only invited bands from London, but on one trip to the UK, he met an entrepreneur from Liverpool who told him that there were some really good bands in that city. When the Beatles arrived in Hamburg, they had to work incredibly hard. They had to play for up to 8 hours a night in the club 7 nights a week. As John Lennon said later, "We got better and we got more confidence. We couldn't help it with all the experience we got from playing all night long in the club." By 1964, when they became really successful, the Beatles had been to Hamburg 4 times and had already performed live an estimated 1,200 times, far more than many bands today perform in their entire careers. Bill Gates' huge stroke of good luck came in 1968, when the high school he was attending decided to spend some money they'd been given on a computer. This computer was kept in a little room that then became the Computer Club. In 1968, most colleges didn't have a computer club, let alone schools. From that time on, Gates spent most of his time in the computer room because he and his friends taught themselves how to use it. "It was my obsession," Gates says of those early high school years. "I skipped sports. I went up there at night. We were programming on weekends. It would be a rare week that we wouldn't get 20 or 30 hours in." So Gates was unbelievably lucky to have access to a computer. But of course, he also put in all those hours of practice, too. Talent, Gladwell concludes, is obviously important, but there are many talented people out there. What makes just a few of them special is that they are lucky and that they put in far more hours of practice than the rest.
All right, very good. Now check your answers with your friends. So, what two main reasons does he give for their extraordinary success? You got it right. Luck and hard work, and also practice. Very good. Now I have 6 questions for you. You can listen over and over, and I need you to answer all these questions. Take your time. You can rewind and listen to it multiple times. Let's do it.
5.6.
Apart from the hockey players, he also gives the examples of the Beatles, the most famous rock band of all time, and Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft. The Beatles were really lucky to be invited to play in Hamburg in 1960. The club owner who invited them usually only invited bands from London, but on one trip to the UK, he met an entrepreneur from Liverpool who told him that there were some really good bands in that city. When the Beatles arrived in Hamburg, they had to work incredibly hard. They had to play for up to 8 hours a night in the club 7 nights a week. As John Lennon said later, "We got better and we got more confidence. We couldn't help it with all the experience we got from playing all night long in the club." By 1964, when they became really successful, the Beatles had been to Hamburg 4 times and had already performed live an estimated 1,200 times, far more than many bands today perform in their entire careers. Bill Gates' huge stroke of good luck came in 1968, when the high school he was attending decided to spend some money they'd been given on a computer. This computer was kept in a little room that then became the Computer Club. In 1968, most colleges didn't have a computer club, let alone schools. From that time on, Gates spent most of his time in the computer room because he and his friends taught themselves how to use it. "It was my obsession," Gates says of those early high school years. "I skipped sports. I went up there at night. We were programming on weekends. It would be a rare week that we wouldn't get 20 or 30 hours in." So Gates was unbelievably lucky to have access to a computer. But of course, he also put in all those hours of practice, too. Talent, Gladwell concludes, is obviously important, but there are many talented people out there. What makes just a few of them special is that they are lucky and that they put in far more hours of practice than the rest.
All right, very good. Now, check your answers with your friends. Okay, let's start with the Beatles. Where did they play and between which years? They played in Hamburg, Germany between 1960 and 1964. Where did the club owner usually get bands from? London. And how much did they have to play? They had to play for up to 8 hours a night, 7 nights a week. How many times had they performed live by 1964? They had performed live about 1,200 times. So that's what we call determination. Now, Bill Gates, when did his school start a computer club? In 1968. Why was this unusual? Because in those days, most colleges, let alone schools, didn't have a computer. What did he and his friends do on the weekends? They spent time at the computer club programming. How many hours did he spend at the computer club every week? Between 20 and 30 hours. And that's all there is to it for this part. Now, just a little discussion to wrap things up here. Look at the pictures. What do you see? That's what I call monetization. Do you agree that luck and practice are just as important as talent? Is luck more important than practice or the other way around? And number 2, think of something you are moderately good at or very good at. Were you lucky to be able to have the opportunity to start doing it? How many hours do you think you have spent practicing it? Do you think you have spent more hours doing it than other people you know? And one more thing, if that's your talent, how can you monetize it? Discuss these concepts with your friends. Part 6 in the house. Everybody making adjectives and adverbs. One of these is luck. For example, being lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time. Look at the bold words in the sentence above. Which is a noun and which is an adjective? Using the word luck, can you make a negative adjective, a positive adverb, a negative adverb? Let's see. For example, a negative adjective, unlucky. A positive adverb, luckily. A negative adverb, unluckily. All right, very good. I need you to do the same. Adjectives, positive, negative. Adverbs, positive, negative. For example, for luck, look, lucky, unlucky, luckily, unluckily. Fortune, fortunate, unfortunate. And the rest is yours. You can use Google or you can use your dictionary to help you. All right? Now, I need you to listen with me and check.
5.7 Word building. Making adjectives and adverbs.
Luck. Lucky. Unlucky. Luckily. Unluckily.
Fortune. Fortunate. Unfortunate. Fortunately. Unfortunately.
Comfort. Comfortable. Uncomfortable. Comfortably. Uncomfortably.
Patience. Patient. Impatient. Patiently. Impatiently.
Care. Careful. Careless. Carefully. Carelessly.
Awesome. You did great. Now, one more stuff and we're done here. Okay, last exercise for this part. Look at these words in bold. For example, fortune, unfortunately. I need you to complete the sentences with the correct form of the bold noun. Take your time and do it. You can stop the video. And if you have done it, listen and check with me.
5.8 1.
The beach was beautiful, but unfortunately it rained almost every day.
2.
My new shoes are very comfortable. I wore them for the first time yesterday, and they didn't hurt at all.
3.
He took the exam quickly and carelessly, and so he made a lot of mistakes.
4.
We were really unlucky. We missed the flight by just 5 minutes.
5.
Jack is a very impatient driver. He can't stand being behind someone who is driving slowly.
6.
It was a bad accident, but luckily nobody was seriously hurt.
7.
It was raining, but fans waited patiently in line to buy tickets for tomorrow's concert.
8.
The roads will be very icy tonight, so drive carefully.
9.
The temperature dropped to 20 degrees, but fortunately, we were all wearing warm coats and jackets.
10.
The bed in the hotel was incredibly uncomfortable. I hardly slept at all.
Okay, very good. And that's all there is to it. I just have one optional exercise for you and we're done for today. And after that, I'll go rest. I have this cold which is killing me. And the last set in the house, and it's optional. You can do it or you can skip it. Writing game. The sentence game. First, look at these rules. You should write correct sentences with the exact number of words given. Contractions count as one word. The sentence must make sense. You should include a form of the word given. For example, if the word is luck, you can use lucky, luckily. All right? Work in teams of 3 or 4 and play the sentence game. You have 5 minutes to write the following sentences. For example, with fortune, 11 words. Comfort, 9 words. Luck, 7 words. Care, 6 words. Patience, 12 words. And after that, compare your sentences with your friends. Who did better? You said. And that's the practice for today and for the new year. Everybody, thank you for watching. If you find my channel useful, make sure to like and subscribe. And one more thing, I've decided to put the slides that I use and the library in the comment section. So make sure to check that out. Until then, my friends, I would like to speak as much as possible, but I have this cold and it's killing me. And I could barely teach today. So, until then, my friends, I promised you, as long as I live, I will teach you. Bye-bye.